Governor, given how unpopular polls show President Biden is, has Vice President Harris done enough to distance herself from President Biden?
Kristen Welker repeatedly pressed Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro on the question that has become a huge issue for the Harris campaign. How exactly would her leadership differ from that of Joe Biden's? And I think the way she framed the question there was a good way of framing it, because yes, this election, of course, is between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, not against Kamala Harris and Joe Biden. However, when you consider the fact that Kamala Harris is Joe Biden's vice president, and when you consider the fact that Joe Biden is an unpopular president, well, she needs to have an answer, and her supporters and allies need to have an answer for this question. Let's see how Shapiro answered it.
You know, Kristen, I think what is clear is this is a race not between Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, but between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. And on that, there are clear contrasts. Kamala Harris wants to cut taxes for the middle class and small businesses. Donald Trump's tariffs and his economic policies would raise costs for middle class families. I think Kamala Harris has a strong and competent approach to foreign policy to try and calm tensions overseas. Donald Trump just wants to throw a grenade and everything and create more chaos and more suffering across the globe. I think you have a clear contrast on freedom between those two candidates. Kamala Harris wants to restore Roe. Donald Trump brags about how he's ripped away the freedom from millions of women across this country. So listen, I think you have a clear contrast between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, and voters are going to the polls literally right now all across America, focusing on that choice, not a choice between Kamala Harris and Joe Biden.
Kamala Harris does not have a foreign policy proposal. Let's be absolutely clear about that. And all of her statements in regard to the broadening and ongoing war in the Middle East has essentially been in line with what we've been hearing from Joe Biden. So I'm sorry, I can't let that lie stand. She would not calm the situation down in the Middle East. Now, to be clear, I don't believe Trump would either. Trump has just been funded by Miriam Adelson to the tune of $90 million in order to allow Israel to annex the West Bank. But please don't lie about Kamala Harris allegedly having a better plan on foreign policy. She does not. In fact, she can't stand Palestinian protesters at any of her events and brushes them off as if they mean nothing. So that's the reality of her foreign policy. I'm not gonna let someone lie about that. Go ahead, Cenk.
Yeah, so I agree with Anna on both fronts. First of all, it's not even worth discussing the foreign policy. Whenever you ask her, she says, I know about Palestinian grief, I've heard about it. I'm not gonna do anything about it. I'm gonna keep sending bombs to kill your family members. Yeah, Trump would kill more of your family members, so you should vote for me. I'm killing less of your family members. No, that's exactly Biden's policy. No difference at all, zero. So now the reason you have to make a difference between you and Biden is because Biden is deeply unpopular. I know that hurts the feelings of Democratic voters.
But it's the truth.
But it is the reality, and he's in the low 30s, sometimes high 20s. Country's going in the right direction is at 25%. If you say that, yes, Biden nailed it, we're going in the right direction, you're going to lose the election. That is super clear. So you have to find a substantive way of saying, this is what Joe Biden did, I appreciate him. You don't have to throw him under a bus, right? But this is what I'm going to do. So one easy way to do it is say, Joe Biden, and I'm going to do this instead of, right? But they don't even have and. That is such bad preparation. And it's really, guys, it's not about pleasing us. Who cares about us? You have to make sure that you get the right message to the voters. Otherwise, they'll think you're the same as Biden and they'll vote against you.
Now, let's watch. And I want to give Kristen Welker credit because she's one of the few hosts on these morning shows, Sunday morning shows, who actually asks tough questions and tough follow-up questions to both sides. And I really do appreciate that. So she wasn't happy with Josh Shapiro's answer. So she tried again and again. Let's watch.
I understand what you're saying, Governor, but polls do show that more Americans feel as though President Biden's policies have hurt them rather than helped them. So can you name one key policy difference between Vice President Harris and President Biden? How would her administration look different?
I've been really encouraged by the amount of energy that Kamala Harris, Vice President Harris, has put into focusing on how she will cut taxes for small businesses. The focus on childcare tax credit expansion, that's something I've done here in Pennsylvania. We've seen that work to ease the burden on families. I think a focus on those kinds of things is particularly important, and those are the kinds of things I think Kamala Harris has brought specifically to this race.
Those aren't necessarily differences, though. They're an expansion or a tweak to some extent to what's been done. Can you name one policy difference?
Well, listen, again, the contrast I am focused on, Kristen, is between her and Donald Trump. And on that, I think it is clearly different.
So, just to reiterate, the reason why this question keeps coming up for the Harris campaign is because Biden's unpopularity can be a real liability for her in the election. In fact, in mid-September, the Democratic Research and Polling Initiative Blueprint conducted a national poll that tested various potential statements that Harris could make about herself and Biden. Those that performed best, the polling found, were those that displayed a clear break between her and Biden, while those that performed worst were those that portrayed a future Harris administration as building on the accomplishments of the Biden era. But any mention of Biden, the polling found, led to less support, even if the position it had Harris taking was the same. Yeah,
so Biden is toxic. That hurts Democrats' feelings so much that they want to say, no, it's not. I never believe any numbers if they come out against us. I don't believe. Guys, you're gonna lose the election if you don't recognize the reality. So let me give you suggestions as to what she could do, because we always try to be constructive. The first start with the thing that she's not going to do, even though I think it would almost guarantee her the election. If she said, hey, listen, Israel killed every leader of Hamas and every leader of Hezbollah. If withdraw now from Gaza, I'm gonna and sign a ceasefire, I'm gonna stop the funding. If she did that, she'd pick up about 5 points and she would lock in Michigan. Yep. She would win. But she won't do that because she thinks following her donors' commands are more important than winning this election. And that's God, you should hold her accountable for that. That is unbelievable that she's making that decision. But every politician in America, unfortunately, does that. They've lost their minds, if you ask me. Okay, but put that aside because she's not gonna do it. Then you go to immigration. You could be honest. And this is a real risky strategy because politicians don't like being honest. But you could say, hey, listen, we tried a certain thing on immigration. And even though we did this, and this right, and we had the right intent, it wound up causing a lot of new immigrants into the country because of the turmoil that was going on in Venezuela and some other Central American countries. But we've learned that lesson. So what I would do differently than Joe Biden is what I'm proposing now about how to control immigration. And the good news is that the Republicans agree. It was written by a Republican senator from Oklahoma. The only person who doesn't agree is Donald Trump. And he's the one that blocked that legislation. We're trying to fix what went wrong. You should be happy that we're doing that. And that is different than what we did in the Biden administration in the middle that caused the problems. That is me learning from it and being a better leader because of it. But all of her consultants will tell her, no, don't be honest. Don't admit that you did anything wrong. Don't ever say that Biden did anything wrong. Let's all pretend that everything is great. But that's not credible. Look at the polling we showed you earlier in the show. Immigration is one of the top reasons that people are going towards Trump instead of Kamala Harris. Imagine if she was honest about it. But even if you don't want to take that risk, I can give you 1,000 other ones. Paid family leave, public option. And you could say, hey, Joe Biden, I'm sure he had the right intent that when he proposed the public option on the campaign trail, but unfortunately he ran out of time and he never proposed it as legislation. I will propose it as legislation because you need to at least have an option that isn't private health insurance that lets you die if you don't have health insurance. God, that would be an incredibly popular message. Look at all these layups and they're not taking any of them.
Now, finally, I want to get to what she's been doing in her campaigning and also how she's been recently answering that question. Because before Welker started grilling Josh Shapiro, she actually played a clip of Harris getting asked the same question. How are you different from Joe Biden? Let's watch how she answered.
My colleague Peter Alexander asked the vice president if she would have done anything differently than President Biden. Take a look at that exchange.
Going forward, there is no question that I bring my own experiences and my own life experiences.
Is there a policy that stands out to you in particular, either?
Sure. I mean, my approach to what we need to do around Medicare covering home health care, born out of my experience of taking care of my mother. My priority on housing, one, because I know what it means, affordable housing and the ability to buy a home.
That wasn't bad. I thought that was pretty good. I mean, she mentioned very specific things like Medicare covering home health care, which is incredibly important, especially for what's now being referred to as the sandwich generation. So it's millennials who are raising children, but their parents are also aging. So they're required to take care of, both sets of people, which is incredibly stressful, obviously can be very costly, and without support from the government can really be a nightmare. And so I like that she mentioned that. I think that if she really emphasizes that messaging, it could work to her advantage. She also repeatedly stated that her administration would seek more input from Republicans than Biden has, and has been continuing her campaigning with Liz Cheney. In fact, she's been campaigning with Liz Cheney specifically today in Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan. I don't think that's helping her campaigning. I don't think that neocons really have much of a constituency at this point in the country, but nonetheless, she's moving forward with that.
Yeah, so I like that answer too. By the way, please get all your surrogates to learn that answer because at least it looks like it's helping the average person, and it is a difference between you and Biden, great. It's a small example, but I'll definitely take it, and they should all say it. But please add more. Give me 3, right? So, for example, here's another winning one. Joe Biden wanted to move the corporate tax rate up to 28% because Trump brought it down to 21%, which is way, way, way too low. But I don't think 28% is enough. I'm going to bring it back to where it was before Trump gave trillions of dollars in tax cuts to the richest people in the country. I'm going to move it back to 35. Now, I don't believe she'll do that at all. And the CNBC would flip out. Good. You want CNBC flipping out and telling everyone, oh my God, she's against the corporate CEOs. Can you believe that she doesn't want to make the richest people even richer? Oh, boo, she's trying to help the average person. Remember the poll we showed you earlier in the show, 61% of Americans saying raise taxes on the rich and on corporations because of what they did in inflation. Why don't you it's a poll that shows you how to win the election. Why don't you say, yeah, goddamn right, I'm gonna raise it to 35%? Because look at all the trillions they made during inflation. And did they share that with us? No, they're never fair. They never share. All they do is raise your prices, the prices on the goods you need for your family. Well, I'm gonna fight back for you. Guys, come on, man, this isn't that hard. But the reason they don't do that is because all of their donors would yell at them. So for God's sake, there's 2 weeks left. You already got the donors' money. Now turn to the voters. Voters. We have to explain this to Democratic leaders because at least the Republicans, they're liars. They're worse than the Democrats on every issue, but they understand, oh, right, we're supposed to appeal to voters. So we'll pretend to be populist. We'll pretend to be for the average man. You could do better than them. You could actually be for the average man. I know that's asking a lot of Democrats, but that's how you win an election.
Thanks for watching. If you become a member, you get to watch all this ad-free, except for, of course, this ad. Still, hit the join button below.